The independent non-profit group Consumers Research, which exposes corporate wrongdoing, has come up with a brilliant strategy to fight the madness. They have set up a new woke alert system which will notify shoppers of the companies that cave to the woke mob. The alert will come via a text and prevent shoppers from giving their money to companies that, well, attack their values. Joining me now is the Executive Director of Consumers Research, Hild. Will, thank you so much for joining me. This isn't a new trend with corporates. So was there one example that was the last straw for you and led you to develop this woke alert system?
Well, we've been working on it for the last few months. Our organization in 2021 launched something called the Consumers First Initiative, which is an ongoing multi-million-dollar ad campaign to attack and name and shame companies that try to distract from their misdeeds and their mistreatment of customers by going woke, cozying up to woke activists, woke politicians, or unfortunately, in many cases, woke asset managers like BlackRock.
Well, that seems to be a massive part of the problem, that the banking sector, the finance companies that control so much of the funding that other businesses need going woke and then demanding that of those who want to bank with them. Nike is a good example because there's all sorts of bad press they receive about conditions for their workers and their products, and yet they seem to cover that up with the virtue signalling by having these ads where they're backing BLM and a bunch of other woke causes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, that was one of the first companies we targeted with our ads, because this is a company that has had problems with sweatshop labor for decades and now currently has a number of its products being made reportedly with slave labor in China. And yet at the same time, they try to work with Colin Kaepernick and any other woke issue they can find to distract from that. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, other woke outlets won't call them out on it. And that's really the thought behind our woke alerts. We know that increasingly consumers are weary of this type of behavior by companies. They know that when companies go woke, it means one of two things. One, it means they're failing their customers and they don't care about it. They don't want to hear any feedback. Or two, they're doing nefarious things overseas, like in China, and they don't want the negative coverage. And so we came up with the woke alert system, basically so that consumers who care about these types of things, corporations undermining their own values, can know about it right away.
And how many people have signed up for woke alerts? And is it only a North American service? Is this something you're going to expand for other markets?
So far, we have north of 40,000 signups, and that says a lot because we only launched it on Friday of last week. So there's clearly a huge reservoir of interest in this, and I think that speaks to the anger that people have at corporate America for focusing on woke activists and woke politicians instead of serving their customers. Unfortunately, right now, it's only offered within North America, within the United States, but we are working on it to make it available to all international citizens.
Well, that's quite impressive that, with minimal media coverage, you've got 40,000 people signed up since launching on Friday. And what are you advocating? Are you telling people think twice about spending your money with this particular company if they're pushing an ideology or values that are not in line with yours? Or is it just a shaming mechanism so the company knows, this isn't just a one-way street? You might get all the leftist adulation, but there are roughly half the country who are probably not happy with what you're doing.
It's a both and. We're not a paternalistic consumer protection organization. We believe that consumers should make up, what they do with their own money. But we do believe in arming them with the best information. And we know that people want to know when a company is undermining their values. And so they can make a decision maybe not to use that product anymore, or to simply contact the company and let them know how grossly they disagree with their decision. We had a previous campaign where it turns out that State Farm Insurance, one of the big insurance companies here in the United States, was bypassing parents and trying to distribute pro-transgender ideology books to kids as young as 5. And one of the reasons that campaign was so effective is that we heard in the media that thousands and thousands and thousands of customers called that company, called their agent, and complained. And they reversed within 4 hours, actually, of our campaign starting. And so similarly, what we're trying to do is arm consumers with the information they need to either contact the company contact or change their purchasing habits, or even contact their elected representatives, because a lot of these companies need special handouts, rely on special handouts or regulatory carve-outs from the government. And if they've become a political utility, then maybe they shouldn't get those anymore.
Well, we are seeing so many companies from all different sectors caving into the leftist agenda. And you mentioned sometimes they're doing it for cover so they can distract from some of their corporate practices. But some of it also is the ideology of the people in their marketing departments. We saw that with Bud Light. How do you determine who gets on this list? Because that list is going to be big and expanding.
Well, any company, let me put everyone on notice here, any company that tries to distract from their mistreatment of their customers or their misdeeds in the market by going woke and cozying up to woke activists, they're on notice. We will target you, we'll come for you. And we've done that to a number of companies so far. I would just add to what you're saying, it's sort of the companies get pushed from both inside and outside the company. I mentioned big asset managers like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. These are companies that unfortunately are starting to violate their fiduciary duty and use other people's money to push woke politics in the corporate boardroom. And they're aided often by either the human resources or in many cases the DEI department, the diversity, equity, inclusion department within these companies. And these groups work hand in glove to bully management into basically become a political utility for the far left progressives. So we're defusing that. It's no longer going to get away with that. If you are in a corporate boardroom and one of these groups brings that to you, you need to push back and say, listen, we're going to get attacked. It's not 2016. It's not 2017 anymore. You're not going to get away with it. And it'll all just be nice press in the New York Times and Washington Post. Groups like us are going to name and shame you.
Will, this is long overdue because we've seen the left behave in this manner for decades, and finally Conservatives are realising that they also hold this power. They can also influence corporates. But how can you really challenge the might of the ESG agenda? You've got so many corporates who almost are obliged to meet these ESG targets, and that lends itself to a lot of woke virtue signalling.
Well, at Consumers Research, we're working every day to end the ESG scam. One of the companies we've targeted is BlackRock, and it's an ongoing campaign of education that we have here in the United States on the ways in which BlackRock uses American investment dollars to push companies to become a political utility for the Democratic Party. And now about 20 to 25 U.S. states are currently, right this day, considering legislation that would push back on BlackRock. It might remove their ability to vote the shares, might even remove their ability to invest the shares for the state. And we've seen federal oversight and actions happening in our government as well, and we've helped those out. So it's absolutely going to take ending this ESG scam before we see the end of this wokeness trend, because a lot of it does flow down from these large asset managers. The good news is they're breaking the law. So as we start to enforce our fiduciary duty under common law, British common law has been around for 300-400 years, these companies are going to have to shape up, or they're going to face massive, massive liabilities.
Now, we've seen just in recent days the National Republican Congressional Committee backing away from their attack of Bud Light. The parent company is a donor to the GOP. They started off by calling for a boycott, Will, but they've deleted that post. What do you make of this backflip? Because I noticed a bit of a debate amongst Conservatives about should you press ahead with this advantage where you've really made a corporate notice that going down this road has got real consequences, and it serves as a warning to other corporates who are contemplating doing something similar.
Well, I'm obviously very biased, but I think what you just spoke about speaks to the need for independent organizations like us calling out wokeness. We're not beholden to any of these companies. We don't take donations from any of these companies. So we don't care. The Republican National Committee or other Republican candidates, they may have an interest in helping defend Bud Light from this horrible, horrible mistake. Our interest is in defending consumers from the woke and the ESG scam. And so we're not going to stop. So I can't speak to what the RNC might do, but I can say this: we are going to be in the field pushing back against this. And anyone would like to learn more, we'd highly recommend they go to our website, because, like I said, we are going to be pushing back on this no matter what.
Oh, well, Hild, more power to you. I'm glad you're doing this, and I hope someone comes up with something similar for Australia. I'm sure someone somewhere will follow in your footsteps. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.